it sure is nice to come home at the end of a long day and enjoy a podcast. But you know what makes the experience that much better? Relaxing with a few puffs of smoke from my McQueen pipe. At McQueenPipes.com, I was able to find the perfect smoking pipe to suit my nerdy, yet dignified sensibilities. I especially love that each pipe is designed and handcrafted by a true artisan, and that all of their pipes are inspired by fantasy books and movies like The Lord of the Rings. Being a bit of a hobbit myself, my pipe is called the Barrel Rider, but they've also got pipes for wizards, rangers, dragon riders, or even goblins. If pipe tobacco isn't your thing, no worries. McQueen Pipes has got you covered with attachments for vaping or even cannabis. Head on over to McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout to receive 15% off of your entire order. Go ahead, treat your nerdy heart to something you'll cherish and enjoy your podcast listening experience in style with a McQueen pipe. That's Mac like mac and cheese and Queen like the band. McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout for a 15% discount on your whole order. Cheers, everyone, and happy podcasting.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Really.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable.
This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Would you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
Anyways, did you have something else that you wanted to add as well?
I just had a completely left field thing that happened today that I just thought was funny. We got an email, Hardy and Fuller got an email from a random person. So she sent this email saying, hey, one of you guys dropped off a business card at my job, and I used to do welding, and I thought that the business card was so pretty. She's never been to the shop. She has never talked to any of us, but she's tattooing our logo on her leg.
The Hardy and Fuller logo?
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
okay.
Never been to the shop. She just saw the logo, and it's it's a pic of two it's kind of like Grecian sort of two ladies in like robes holding an anvil, and she's getting it tattooed. And we're like, what do we do about this? Is this a thing that we need to does she get a discount now? But like she's never been to the shop, and I just thought it was like so bizarre and kind of left field. I have no idea. It turns out it was the girl at the Ace Hardware near my house, and she just I must have dropped off a business card a couple weeks ago, and she's getting it tattooed on her leg.
That's kind of cool.
Despite never have taken a class, so all right, I guess.
That's cool. I mean, well,
yeah.
Good for her, I guess, and excuse me. Hopefully she takes a class soon.
I don't know, man.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Biographers. I'm Daniel Newman, hanging out with Akiva Miola.
What's up, y'all?
We're about to get going on to Mark Twain Part 9. This is a little bit of a psych out, because on the last episode, we were kind of trying to figure out what our recording schedule was going to be throughout the holiday season. We were like, oh, well, this will be the last one, then we'll pick back up in January kind of a thing. And then we'll keep it a secret for now, but something else kind of came up, and so we're working on another little project, let's say, and that's going to be released in January, at the end of January. And as a result, we kind of went, well, let's just get the episode 9 recorded and then released, and it'll actually come out the day after Christmas. I believe it'll be the 26th. So there you go. Again, it was we thought it was not going to happen until the new year, but I think that this actually works out pretty well, because episode 9, this will come out the day after Christmas, and then you'll have 3 weeks of anticipation before we drop the 10th and final episode of Mark Twain. So you're welcome. Merry holidays, everybody.
Yeah, hope everybody had a good Christmas. I hope everybody...
Oh, that's right. We have to speak in future tense, because this is going to come out after Christmas. So, hopefully everybody had a nice time. And maybe this will even give you something to listen to on your commutes back home if you traveled or anything like that. So that'll be pretty fun. But yeah, so we've got this episode and then episode 10, and then we'll leave it for now for the later announcements, which we'll do in the 10th episode. But pretty excited for today. I think there's some good info, some good drama. We're going to get all into it,
I brought my tissues
though.
as requested.
This one's not going to be quite as tissue filled, but we're gonna start to dabble some toes into it or whatever. So it'll be
dabble some toes into it. All right.
Did you see that?
Dip our toe and dabble into it. We're gonna dabble some toes. Just dee-dee-dee-dee-dee.
You make fun, but my weird-isms and your weird-isms are being adopted by other human beings. One of my favorites is that apparently at some point, and by the way, listeners out there, y'all do this to us sometimes where you'll just respond to something and go, ha ha ha, and then you'll say something that apparently we said. I half the time don't even remember saying it. But one of our listeners during the Pancho Villa series just commented on one of them and said, I am adding dabbled in dickishness to my regular vocabulary. And I was like, that sounds like something I would say.
Was that you or me? I can't remember.
Know. But either way, that's why I say you joke, Akiva, but we say random things like that and apparently people laugh and then now they want to use them. So whatever that phrase was
Language
that I just said,
effort,
dabble some toes.
Let's dabble some toes into Mark Twain. Don't look that up.
Yeah. That doesn't sound good. But just before we get going, everybody, like always, if anybody wants to support the show, you can do so by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. And if you feel like leaving us a review anywhere, we'd appreciate that as well. Of course, anywhere you get your podcasts. But generally speaking, we're finding that's happening on places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So any of that little boost would be appreciated as well. So with that, let's get going into Mark Twain Part 9. Believe it or not, this has been a long series, but I've enjoyed it.
I certainly have as well. If it's good, make it long. If it's okay, make it short. And this is good. So I'm glad that we pulled this all the way out to 10. Me too. And I think you'll kind of see today too. There's enough information that it does make sense for anybody looking for a deeper dive onto a human being. You'll kind of see this information and go, man, if you yada-yada'd this, there's a lot that would have been missed. So I think you'll see. All right. Well, last time we saw Mark Twain publish his most enduring piece of literature, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a testament to his ever-growing rejection of racism and bigotry. Upon the book's release, it was and continues to be controversial, and it was banned by a number of institutions, which actually boosted the book's sales. But Sam Clemens had become less and less interested in writing, and was instead, erroneously, turning his attention towards the world of business and investment. You're shaking your head, and I'm like, I know. Bad news, buddy. The second you get a bit of money and you go, I think I'm an ideas man, stop yourself.
Yes. His biggest money pit was something called the Page typesetting machine, which Sam believed would revolutionize the printing industry.
I've got one right in my kitchen.
But the machine's inventor could never seem to perfect it, and Sam was bleeding money. Sam did publish the memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant in 1885, which was a massive success, but his business sense was so poor that his bank account was running dangerously low by 1890. In 1889, he released another book called A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, but once again, sales were just not enough to sustain the Clemens family's extravagant lifestyle.
I did love that book because it was basically just chapter after chapter about why he thinks Americans are better than the British.
I mean, basically.
He was like, if British people were like us, they'd be savages.
If only they had an American thrust into their lives back in like the 1200s or whatever. But where we left off last time, we were just entering 1891. Sam is now 55 years old. His mother, Jane, and his wife, Livy's mother, Olivia, had just passed away. Their daughter, Jean, was just starting to show signs of epilepsy. They were going broke and contemplating a move to Europe where the US dollar could go much further. Things were so bad that during the holidays of 1890, Sam would write to a friend saying, quote, "Merry Christmas to you. I wish to God I could have one myself before I die." Just so sad.
It reminds me of a coworker that I had, where every time I'd ask him, like, "Oh, how are you doing?" He was like, "If I were doing any better, I'd be all right."
That's good. And it wasn't just the financial woes. Sam's 30-plus year habit of writing pages upon pages every single day had been catching up with him. and his arm had developed arthritis so severe that the act of writing was inching closer towards agony. He solved this problem partially by renting a phonograph machine, which would allow him to record his voice, which could then be transcribed by someone else. So like a record machine, basically.
We don't happen to have any of these old recordings of Mark Twain's voice, do we?
Sadly, none of these phonograph recordings are known to exist. Almost definitely because they were recycled, because we'll kind of talk about in a second, he didn't love the process. So basically by the end of it, they were like, well, we can use these, we can melt them down and then reuse them again for something else. So almost definitely none exist. But who knows? Maybe in 50 years, we'll uncover one somewhere. We don't know. But soon, he would start to write a new book with this method. And in doing so, he would become the first author in history to dictate his work into a recorded form to then be transcribed. Though he would give up about halfway through the writing, as he said it detracted from his writing process. He just couldn't formulate his words the way that he wanted to when he was talking. He kind of needed to write it down.
I get that. I also have carpal tunnel, and when I'm writing these episodes, I've tried to use the text-to-speech thing, and it just comes out atrociously. I'm not sure if you've ever tried that. But
haven't, because I like
it's
typing.
It's not the same.
You know? But anyhow. So instead of using this whole phonograph process, he trained himself to write with his left hand to save his right hand the pain. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. I got to do that.
Now, the result from these efforts was possibly Mark Twain's least known book called The American Claimant, which is a political satire comedy of sorts that is essentially a different version of The Prince and the Pauper. But instead of a prince and a peasant, it's about a British earl who wants to live as a rugged American and a rugged American who wants to live the snobbish life of a British earl.
I love how he's just like on his anti-Britain bent right now of these last couple of years.
It is true, but he also, if you've picked up on this, he has an utter fascination with identity and birth circumstances and trading places and all that kind of stuff. He's just fascinated by. So this was less of a, because The Prince and the Pauper, though it's not really, it was pitched as something of a children's story. It's really not, but that was kind of how it was framed and sold. This was more of like a let's kind of reuse the same idea and make it for actual adults, where we're talking about, literally a British earl and a rugged American. So like imagine them switching places and how would that look and all that kind of stuff. But I'd be willing to bet 90% of you out there are like, American Claimant? I've never heard of that before.
I totally drew a blank for me. We were just talking about this off air, but something that I noticed with Mark Twain is he does kind of remind me of those very early cultural anthropologists who would like go out to remote areas and be like, these people say this and they do this and they talk like this. And then he kind of spins it into his own books later on.
In many ways. And obviously he's very influenced by places he's been to and people that he's met as well. Yeah. So, like when he wrote The Prince and the Pauper, he had just come back from England and he was like, boy, those British,
Yeah.
And that was kind of a lot of his work. Now, exact numbers have been lost, but it is estimated to have sold somewhere between 10 and 15,000 copies in the first year, maybe even less.
Ooh, that's a bit low.
Super unpopular, which is probably one of the reasons nobody else out there has ever heard of it, or very few have heard of The American Claimant. But thankfully, Sam had grown tired of the sluggish development of the page typesetting machine and halted all payments to the inventor, whom Sam started referring to as, quote, Page the microbe. So like the germ, basically.
That's funny.
Now, outside of his ever-growing list of anxieties, the apple of Sam's eye, Susie, was now 19 years old and attending Bryn Mawr College, an all-girls school in Pennsylvania, and was by all accounts becoming more and more like her old man with every passing day. And by the way, I do have to say, it's amazing. Even though I'm watching this from the outside looking in 100 plus years later, it's like I literally was going through this and going like, God, it seems like just yesterday little Susie was born. You know what I mean?
I did that same thing with Mary Shelley, where because you kind of like, it's almost like the perspective of like like a mother or like a grandmother, where you watch this little baby and then they get older and then they have kids and then you get a fondness for the kids. Like it's very interesting.
It was like in the last episode we were talking about how she was like basically an early teenager, like 12,
yeah, like her
13,
first writing,
and she was writing
like,
the biography of him, right? As my papa's so lovely and he's so absent-minded. And you're like, oh, cute. Now she's in college. What the heck? Like, it's just weird, you know?
Time flies when you're reading a book about somebody else's life.
Now, again, she was becoming a lot more like her dad, but it wasn't the knack for writing that Susie inherited from her father, but rather performing on stage, as she was currently pursuing acting and singing. And apparently she was really good, too. Now, Sam had mixed feelings about it. I think kind of like most parents are when their kid says, I'm going to go into theater.
That's so funny, too, because he is like a stage actor a little bit.
I know. And...
but I guess also, like, comedians don't want their kids to be comedians.
I don't know. It's one of those weird ones where, like, there's been this big conversation about Nepo babies recently and everything like that. And I do have weird mixed feelings about it, but it's funny because it seems like the world is just starting to recognize it. But really, when we look back on it, we're like, dude, so many people that we think about as like, oh, no, they were like their own people. Like, the most current example I can think of is Ben Stiller. I always had it in my mind that Ben Stiller was just Ben Stiller. He just wanted to be a comedian and actor, and he grew up into it. And it was like, no, apparently his dad and mom were a famous comedy duo all throughout the like 50s, 60s, and 70s kind of a thing. Yeah.
That's funny.
And he literally watched his parents and went, I want to do that. And now there's Ben Stiller. You know?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it historically, nepotism has been the number one means of job acquisition for most of human history. And like, obviously, we're talking about positions of power. That's different. But most people who became blacksmiths were blacksmiths because their dad was a blacksmith and they already had all the blacksmith stuff to make blacksmith things.
I think that's why we have so many Smiths in the world. Like, hi, I'm Brandon Smith. I'm, you know, like, it's like that's where it came from.
You know, this is how you got your job. Was like, oh, my dad's a fisherman, so I guess I'll take his boat when he dies. You know,
yeah.
And then you're like, well, my dad's an actor.
I kind of want to do the same thing. But anyways, yeah. It is funny, though, because Mark Twain, when Susie was like, I want to be a singer and an actor and play piano and stuff, he was like, really? You know, like he wasn't stoked about it, let's say, right?
That's funny.
But like all kids, she was desperate to remove herself from her parents' shadow and even started going by Olivia while at school. Because if you remember, her name is Olivia Susan, and they always called her Susie for short, just to make it easier. But she now, as a young growing woman, was like, I'm Olivia now, kind of a thing, which is also funny because, but you have to think about it too. He was called Sammy as a boy. And then when his dad died and he went into the world of printing, he was like, I'm Sam now. Like, there is something about owning your name like that represents your transition from being a child into a grown-up, you know?
Yeah. Were you ever called Dan or Danny?
Not Danny, no. I refused. There was one time my dad called me Danny when I came home from school, and I looked at him like he had worms crawling out of his ears. But I've had several friends, like one of my best buds when I was a kid, David Nealand, who listens to the show sometimes. So David, if you're listening, hey buddy, how you doing? I never introduced myself as Dan, but he just one day was like, hey Dan. And I was like, okay.
That's so weird. I would never call you Dan. You're Daniel.
Right?
I don't know.
But some people did. And that's usually the way, like anytime anybody asks, I'll be like, I introduce myself as Daniel. But if you're the kind of person who says, hey, Dan, I'm cool with it because that means we're buddies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't explain it, but there is a hard line with Danny. I am not a Danny. I know that.
That's fair.
You know?
Yeah. I'm also not a nickname person either. My parents had a nickname that I will not divulge on this public forum.
I think you've told it to me before, but I'll be respectful and not repeat it.
And if anybody besides my own mother calls me that, it sends flames up my back. So neither here nor there. As you were saying about Olivia now.
Yes, who is trying to get out of her parents' shadow. But kind of conversely, like all parents who feel their children growing to independence, Sam missed her desperately. And much to Susie's horror, Sam arranged for himself to give a guest lecture at her college. Which is the most like parent move ever.
100%. As somebody who both of my parents were teachers at the schools that I went to, I can relate.
Yes.
Seeing my dad dancing at prom was otherworldly.
Yeah. And I think this we'll get into it here in a second, but this was equivalent, okay? Now, when he arrived, Susie begged him not to tell one story in particular called The Golden Arm, which was kind of one of his known stories. It was a ghost story, right? Mm-hmm. Susie found it really embarrassing, so that's why she was like, please do not tell the Golden Arm story. So Sam promised he would not. But when it came time for the lecture, he told the story anyways.
Yep.
And Susie ran from the lecture hall in tears because she was so embarrassed.
Oh.
Now, when Sam tracked her down, he made the excuse that he was anxious about the lecture because she was in the audience, and he told the story out of desperate panic. But regardless, the damage was done, and Susie dropped out of college the next month.
No. What was the story about? What was so embarrassing about this golden arm?
It's so I read into it, and there's nothing inherently terrible about it. I think there's just a level of in the same way that if you read The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, you're probably not going to laugh too much, but people were dying when they read that story for the first time when it came out. Sensibilities changed. This was one of those where I think from her perspective, it was just very backwoods. It was very please don't. You make a bunch of voices and you're telling this stupid ghost story and we're not children anymore and we don't listen to ghost stories and they're all going to think that I'm a yokel from blah, blah, blah. I think that's sort of what the perspective was.
That's so funny.
Yeah, she was very, very embarrassed. And we don't know for sure if Sam's actions were the direct cause of her dropping out of college, but we can only speculate on that one. Right. Now, 2 months after that, Sam and Livy made the final decision to close down their house in Hartford and move to Europe, which, if you remember, it was because they were basically broke and they needed to make their dollar go further in Europe.
Yeah.
Now, Sam told the papers it was because Mrs. Clemens's health demanded she continuously visit the mineral baths of Europe, but the reality was, again, they were just broke. Now, on June 6th, 1891, Sam and Livy, along with Susie, who is now 19, Clara, now 17, and Jean, who is about a month shy of turning 11, left from New York, headed for Le Havre, France. They would not live in America again for 9 years and would never return to live in their house in Hartford, at least not as a family. But once in France, they moved on to Geneva to deposit their kids with a nanny before going off on a tour of Europe. Guys, stop. Just
That's so funny.
Save your money. What are you actually doing right now?
Oh my God. Yeah, I wish when money was tough for me, the solution was a tour of Europe.
I know, right?
I wish it was we can't afford to live in the United States anymore. I guess we'll just have to go to France.
And it's funny because for anybody else out there thinking this, I remember I told this to Kat, my wife, and she was like, that's weird. Why would that go further? You have to remember this was before Europe was the EU. All of these countries were separate, completely separate countries.
True.
There was no United Nations, nothing. So every single one of these countries had their own economy, which meant their own currency was way less valuable because there was less value in their dollar, right? So I don't know how else to say it. It was just the economy was not as strong, so their money wasn't worth as much. So all separate countries.
Fair enough.
Now they stopped in Bayreuth, Germany, as Livy insisted on seeing the new opera house that had been built for... Any guesses, Akiva?
Is it going to be... Whatever. I'll just let you send it. Cut this out, Jesus.
It's okay, because I throw a lot of names at you, but you should know this one. The Nazi Richard Wagner.
Oh, of course. Wagner. Oh, my goodness. Yes. Because in my head, I was thinking Franz Liszt, but I was like, what's the asshole guy in the Franz Liszt series? It was Wagner.
Richard Wagner. And much to Sam's chagrin, Livy bought tickets for 19 different opera performances. And if you remember, he not only hated the opera, but he really hated Richard Wagner.
Yes.
So she was like, I also bought 19 tickets for us to go. And he was like, great, thank you.
It's good that they're tightening the old belt.
They're pinching their pennies here, yeah, for sure.
20 opera house seats.
Now, from there, Sam took the family on a 200-mile cruise from Lake Geneva down along the river, probably the Rhone River, not the River Rhone. Well, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Now, Susie Clemens wasn't actually thrilled to have left America and was starting to feel trapped. And one other detail to note about Susie Clemens is that she was, by all indications, gay. And I will say, I asked friends who are part of the queer community. From what I understand, saying gay is perfectly fine in this descriptor, but I will qualify that we don't know the full extent of her sexuality, so it is entirely possible it is something else, which is why I said by all indications gay, but we don't know for sure.
Queer to some capacity.
Just wanted to throw that out there in case anybody goes, hang on a minute, Daniel. I'm not trying to hurt anybody here. I'm just trying to be as accurate as I can based off of the knowledge that I have.
Interesting. So, what sort of information kind of led you to that conclusion?
Well, I will read you some stuff here. So during her time in college, she appears to have entered into a secret romance with a woman named Louise Sheffield Brownell, not Brown. Ooh. And while we can't know with 100% certainty what her sexual orientation was, again, I'll read a few bits of letters from Susie to Louise, and you can make your own decision. Susie would write things like, quote, "Louise, beloved, I love you night and day with all my might. You are so sweet, dear, so lovely, lovely. My darling, I do love you so, and I feel so separated from you. If you were here, I would kiss you hard on that little place that tastes so good, just on the right side of your nose."
Oh.
Side of your nose. "If I could only look in on you, we would sleep together tonight. Goodbye, my darling. Your Olivia."
Yeah, they were just roommates.
Just good friends.
They were just good friends.
You know?
Hey, homies kiss each other on the sweet place on the side of their nose and sleep with one another, and that's fine.
Right.
That's so funny.
It's one of those that you're like, I mean, come on, dude. That's pretty not subtle, you know? If they were just pals, there'd be an instance of like, I miss you. We laughed so much together.
It's so like syrupy too. Like she's not even like writing anything particularly poetic. She's like, I love you, and it's because I love you so much that I love you.
Well, and it's funny too because it actually really did remind me of the love letters that Sam would write to Livy when they were first together. Like,
yeah, because he was kind of that way too, and like the very Bugs Bunny sort of like. And if you let me count the ways.
And if you remember, there was even a point where there was a PS that he did. He was like, "P.S. I do love you, Livy. P.P.S. I love you, Lily." I did it again, Livy. P.P.P.P.S. I do love you, Livy. Like,
yeah.
So you are so sweet, dear, so lovely, lovely. Like those types of things. I'm like, dude, it's weird. It's like, it feels like the same expression of love that her dad would probably give to her mom. You know,
that's cute.
So it actually is very sweet, I thought.
That's adorable. Was it just like a fling? Did they end up staying together?
Well, we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. Now, as it often was in those times, entering into any form of same-sex relationship, or if you want to just call it queer relationship, we can. It was considered too taboo to handle, even sometimes for those in the middle of them. And Susie would write to Louise a little later saying, quote, "For you know, dear love, that although there is a great possibility of intimacy between us, we have never really been intimate yet. We will someday when it comes natural."
Ooh, that'd be great for HBO. You know, they love those films where it's like a lesbian couple that never actually touches, but it's just yearning for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
That's true. And I will also say, as sort of like just a personal opinion qualifier here, this is one of those instances where if anybody out there is going, well, why didn't she tell Mark Twain and her mom? I think Mark Twain was progressive in certain ways, but I don't think it was at a point yet where any type of non-traditional marriages, if we can call it that, it's just society at large, man, it was a rare gem of a human being that would accept something like that. Yeah. And I don't think that Mark Twain would have been like, "Hey, that's great, babe. Love who you love." I think he would have been like, "What? No daughter of mine will be like that." Like, I do think that is the truth. And who knows, maybe over time, like many humans have, he would have become more okay with it and been like, "Hey, you know what? Screw all of you. My daughter is who she is. It's fine. And I love her regardless." But I don't think that would have been the case
It would be,
Maybe
at least from Mark's perspective, it would have been like sending his child to the vultures, too. Because he's also part of high American society, which is intensely Protestant and intensely religiously dogmatic. And even though he might not share those values, I'm certain that it was ingrained in him as a good Southern boy to maybe not necessarily ride with that. And let's remember, this time period's right off the heels of like Mary Shelley having to covertly escort her trans friend from England to France so they could live together. And then even after that, I'm pretty sure he got imprisoned and like ended up dying in prison. Like this is not one of those where it's like, well, as long as you don't tell anyone, you know?
Yeah. For sure.
Aw, it's sweet and also very sad.
I know. I totally agree, because this is definitely a secret that Susie kept to herself. I don't know that there was anybody else she ever told. Anyhow, as the fall of 1891 approached, the family made their way through the French village of Domremy-la-Pucelle. Sorry, every French person, if I'm butchering that. But it was the birthplace of Joan of Arc in 1412. And also, I've also heard some people say Jeanne of Arc. I'm saying Joan of Arc, leave me alone.
Yeah, we don't listen to what the French have to say about language. Thank you very much.
I thought you were just going to say, we don't listen to what the French have to say.
Also true.
Now, as for Joan of Arc, Sam had always been interested in her, but this stopover breathed into life a roaring flame of interest, and Sam soon started to devour every book he could find about her life and times. More on that later. Now, as the year turned, the Clemens family found themselves in Berlin. Sam had been able to make some money writing letters to a newspaper back home about his European travels, so they at least felt a little bit more stable. It's some income coming in there.
Gotcha.
In Berlin, Sam discovered that Mark Twain was as popular here as he was back in the States, and was even invited to the German palace to have dinner with the new ruler, Kaiser Wilhelm II.
Oh, wait.
And I kind of said this in the last episode. Yes, everybody, Mark Twain sat next to and had dinner with the German emperor who would, not too long from now, lead Germany into the First World War. Pretty wild.
Wow.
Now, over the coming months, the family would go through the south of France, then on to Italy, staying in Pisa, Rome, and Florence.
Nice.
There's another weird little connection. Now, everybody loved Florence, but nobody more so than Susie, who said the city made her feel alive again. After a month there, they returned to Germany, where they planned to stay for the summer. And funny enough, it was during their stay in Germany in 1892 that Sam would meet another, perhaps equally famous writer, Oscar Wilde.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was like just coming up, in the past 10 years or so as like this voice of new writing and plays and all this kind of stuff. So there's not a whole lot of information there. It sounds like they kind of said hi to each other at dinner and talked for maybe 15, 20 minutes kind of a thing, but just a neat little connection there.
Interesting.
By August, Sam had started working on a new book. Probably spurred on to write it because it was the only thing that seemed to work for him. This new book would be another addition to the tales of Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and Jim. His travels through Europe served as inspiration, as the book would eventually be titled Tom Sawyer Abroad. But for now, the family continued to hop around Europe, and in September of 1893, they settled back into Florence, Italy. It was in Florence that Sam completed Tom Sawyer Abroad, and it was soon off to be published. Most people agree, though, that Tom Sawyer Abroad is one of Mark Twain's worst books.
I was about to say this. I didn't want to critique the master here, but that sounds like it's going to be a hack.
Oh, let me get into it. The story is basically about Tom, Huck, and Jim getting wrapped up with a zany professor with whom they get into a hot air balloon and drift from St. Louis to North Africa. It just had no real substance to it. And the biographer, one of my main books that I read, Ron Powers, he described the entire thing as quote unquote pure pulp.
Yeah.
So just like there was nothing to it. It was just this sort of like, let me tell you this stupid story, and it just happens to have Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn and Jim, and that's sort of it. So like
just like the Cars 3 of Mark
I've
Twain
heard
books.
Cars 3 is great. I've never seen it though.
Oh,
I've heard many people be like, it made me bawl. kind of a thing. But I don't know. I got to watch it.
Okay, sorry, Cars 3 fans.
Hey,
Minions of...
there we go. Now we've arrived.
Minions of Mark Twain.
But with this new book, Sam figured he could use these well-known characters to churn up some sales. He sold the work to be published in serial, but it produced very little return on investment. It just wasn't popular. People kind of saw through it and were like, I don't know about this. But this part is really fascinating. And this is one of the reasons I love doing these biographies, is because it illuminates things that even I thought maybe I knew about and then I really didn't know about. And this is one of those times. So around this time, Sam would begin to see headlines from American newspapers, when he could get his hands on them, that would spark an idea for a book that most consider Mark Twain's last truly great novel. The newspaper headlines were talking about a man named Homer Plessy, who had been thrown into jail in Louisiana for sitting in a quote-unquote whites-only train car. Homer Plessy was 1/8 black, so he reasoned that he was actually more white than black. But, obviously, the people in his train car and most of the people in Louisiana didn't see it that way. Homer Plessy, I know, Homer Plessy would fight the charges in New Orleans, but the judge, a man named John Howard Ferguson, denied Plessy's request for dismissal. The case would go to the Louisiana Supreme Court, who would uphold Ferguson's decision, and it would eventually go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, who would also uphold the decision with a vote of 7-1 against Homer Plessy.
Wow.
The case would be a landmark known as Plessy versus Ferguson. And for the next 60 years, it would be the foundational framework of the quote-unquote separate but equal notion that led to an influx of laws that would eventually become known as Jim Crow laws.
Could you imagine, just to take it out of perspective, right? We kind of know the story here. Could you imagine you sitting on a bus becomes the talk of the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Like, really, guys? Nothing better to do?
And we're even going to get into, in just a second here, why this, in Mark Twain's mind especially, became so absurd. But
it's insanity.
Hear it out. It is insane. Now, as the story was breaking, Sam felt like his brain was breaking too. He basically thought, how is it possible that this is even happening? The man is 1/8 black, and somehow he was thrown in jail for committing this quote-unquote crime and is being literally judged based off of his looks, even though he is technically more white than black. How white would he have to look before it was no longer a crime? And that last idea in particular was really at the core of his thought process. How white does a person need to look in the United States before the pro-white laws kick in? Which is a profound idea, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also like trying to picture, I don't know what the
Homer Plessy?
Yeah, I don't know what Homer Plessy looks like, but I'm trying to picture a gentleman who is 1/8 black and 7/8 white. And I'm just wondering who on the bus was like just with binoculars scouting out, or who on this train car with binoculars was scouting out this dude. And we're like, we got to make a court case out of this. Wild.
Well, and I think, obviously not being an expert here, but from what I seem to understand, I mean, even looking at Obama when he was elected, it was actually, and I remember this because when he first got elected, it was still at a point where I was, God, I don't want to get into it, but I was not where I am mentally now, and not even in terms of, like, it wasn't a racial thing. It was political, right?
Yes.
I didn't align politically at that point in my life. And I remember in especially conservative commentary, people making this big deal about Obama going, but you know he's half white, right? You know his mom was white.
Goodness. Yes.
And then I remember having a conversation with somebody at some point about this, and they said, do you understand, though, that doesn't matter? Because when you look at Barack Obama, your thought is not, well, there's a half-white guy. Is it?
Yeah. I remember around that time, people were not saying this is our first mixed race president. They were saying this is our first black president, because unfortunately in the United States, the one drop rule is relevant to a lot of people. Maybe not in context of who they'll associate with, but in context of how they'll identify somebody.
Yeah. And that was...
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I'm looking at Homer Plessy, and I cannot even comprehend how someone could distinguish this man based off of race. You have to be like a super racist with super racist genetic vision where you could look into somebody's DNA in order to identify this person. Wow.
Totally. And I think that was, going back to the core of it, that was sort of Mark Twain's whole thing of like, wait, this is actually sort of, I hate to say hilarious, but it's like we're sitting here going, we know scientifically...
There's a brutal comedy to it for sure.
Right. And we know scientifically this person is 7/8 white. And
whatever
yet,
that means.
Exactly, right? It doesn't matter. But whatever that means, he was like, yet somehow people have the legal ability, and that's the key here, the legal ability to look at the person and go, nope, I'm making the decision, you're black, therefore, and then laws can get carried out against that. It's comically disturbing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a bit with General Dumas, where he was just like, since he was half white, he was like, oh, yeah, you could be the sheriff of the town. You could be an opera singer. You could be a judge. Oh, but your brothers, I'm 100% selling them. Sorry about that.
Exactly.
You know, and you're like, but okay, all right, I guess. I'm now the Count of de Paris in Paris. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it does like break your brain a little bit, because I can only imagine this poor guy going up before the U.S. Supreme Court and being like, how much whiter do I need to be before you're okay with me? And that is a heartbreaking
like the Family
thought.
Guy thing where it's like the police officer. This might be a little bit not on topic, but the police officer has like the color sheet from Home Depot with like all of the different paints, and he's like, all right, okay, you're free to go. You know,
but like that is really at the core of this whole thing, right? That exact idea. It's weird to I don't even know how to put it into words, but when I was like fully researching through this, and again, my wife laughed at me because she was like, did you not know much about Plessy versus Ferguson? And I was like, I guess not.
I didn't either, really.
And a little bit shame on me, honestly, because it is a hugely important piece of American history and even potentially world history. But it was one of those that when I really read into it, I was like, this is so... It breaks my brain to think about this, because
it's
the dumbest
shit I've ever heard.
They literally were like, they looked at him and they went, almost exactly like your Family Guy gag, where it's like they held up a fucking swatch and went, no, I don't think so, guy. I think you're still in the category of black.
There's a bit of Ochre 13, I think. That is
so unbelievable to me. You know what I mean? Anyhow.
So I'm sure that this was ripe for the picking for somebody like Twain to pick apart.
Yes. And honestly, this would tap into his lifelong fascination with circumstances of birth, like we've talked about, identity, and how all of that now was tying into law. He would soon start to work on a book called Pudd'nhead Wilson that would deal with these exact problems and was directly inspired by the trials of Homer Plessy. Now, though it would not be much of a commercial success, it would be Mark Twain's last truly significant piece of literature. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview here. Mm-hmm. The story starts off in pre-Civil War America. A lawyer named David Wilson moves to a small town in Missouri and earns the nickname of Pudd'nhead after making a joke that basically nobody gets. So they all, ironically, brand him as stupid, and they start calling him Pudd'nhead.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, the narrative then shifts to a slave named Roxana, or Roxy for short, her son, known as Chambers, and the family they serve. Now, Roxy, and this is where you can see the direct inspiration, Roxy is 1/16 black. Her son is 1/32 black, and both of them are fair-skinned, and this is important. Roxy is in charge of taking care of her master's infant son named Tom Driscoll, because his mother died when he was like basically an infant. And Tom Driscoll, he happens to be the exact same age as her own son. So Roxy decides to switch out the master's son with her own to spare her child the life of slavery.
Ooh.
The story, and by the way, for anybody going, how did the master not notice? Because he was a very inattentive father and barely gave a shit about his son. So she was like, he's never going to notice. So she swaps him out and he doesn't notice. Okay?
That's hilarious, by the way.
Yes.
Good for Roxy.
Well, but listen to the rest of the story because it's wild. So the story then moves forward 20 years, and Roxy's son, who thinks he is Tom Driscoll, has grown up to be a sadistic monster, the epitome of a southern plantation owner. When Roxy's slave master dies, he gives her freedom in his will, and she starts to work for actual money, saving up to retire. But when she eventually saves up enough to retire, she discovers that the bank where she put her money has failed, and all her money is lost. Oh. So she decides to visit her long-lost son and ask for money. Tom Driscoll blows her off, so she tells him the truth of his origins, and that he is actually her son, the son of a slave. He still won't help her, so she then blackmails him for money. Now, there is a lot more to the story, but eventually what happens is, in his desperation for money, Tom Driscoll murders his wealthy uncle, is taken to court, prosecuted by Pudd'nhead Wilson, who we talked about at the very beginning, and through the modern innovation of fingerprinting, because Mark Twain was fascinated with fingerprinting, they all discover that he is not the real Tom Driscoll, and therefore is not the heir to the Driscoll estate. The real Tom Driscoll is then found, his rights are restored, and in my opinion, this is the real heart of what the story is trying to say about society. When the real Tom Driscoll has his rights restored, he finds himself in an impossible situation. He was raised as a slave and feels completely out of place and awkward in quote-unquote white society. But now that he has been outed, so to speak, as a white man, he is no longer welcome in black society. Ooh. So he has nowhere to exist in the world anymore, right? And it's a societal construction that he is now faced with to be like, but wait, you put me here and now I'm back, but you think I'm this and I'm not, and then you think I'm that and I'm not, so I have nowhere, I don't belong anywhere.
Yeah. Fascinating.
And
super fascinating.
Heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
Now, in a final dagger twist, Roxy's son, not Tom Driscoll, who has been thrown in jail, has his prison sentence overturned as the courts decide that since he is the son of a slave, he is actually the property of the Driscoll family and is then sold off as a slave to help pay off the debts of the Driscoll estate.
Whoa.
Crazy, right?
That is some crazy drama.
It's weirdly brilliant, like puzzle writing. The story itself
this
is
would
just
make a fantastic show, I feel like.
I know, right?
Yeah. Wow. It kind of reminds me of like almost like a Knives Out scenario where like you're trying to figure out who is entitled to what and just all these twists and turns. Very, very interesting. And yeah, totally plays with this the fake but real identity of race, you know, especially here in America where it's like, oh, it's not actually anything, but it has real consequences.
I think you just said it perfectly. It's not really anything. She literally swapped out her son thinking this would save him for the life of slavery, and in doing so, he became the very thing that she was trying to make him not be, essentially. Like, she was like, I don't want you to live in this suffering life or whatever. And then he becomes a monster and a murderer, gets thrown into jail, and then actually becomes a slave in the end anyways. It's this whole just twist and turn thing of like, shit, man, it's all of these things have been constructed by society, and they were the ones that decided. All of white society decided he was white until they didn't.
Yeah.
That's a wild thought. You know what I mean?
Weird. Super weird.
Yeah, bizarre. Now, the whole thing is an ironic tale that speaks again to the ideas of birth, identity, society's ideas of what it means to be white or black, and how laws affect each based on that judgment. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, by February of 1893, he would write to his publisher that his book was finished. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, back in New York, Sam's publishing house continued to flounder. And if you remember, he had started his own publishing house. That was how he published the Ulysses S. Grant, that's a mouthful right now, memoir. And try as they might, and they did, nothing was working, and debt was continuing to pile up. And it wasn't even that their track record was poor. They published 2 books by Leo Tolstoy, and 2 others by Walt Whitman between 1891 and 1892, in addition to Mark Twain's own work. Now, though he was no longer paying a monthly salary to the page typesetting machine's inventor, Sam still couldn't let it go. Around the new year of 1893, he received word that the inventor James Page had managed to secure funding to have 50 of the machines produced. So Sam headed back to the States around March. Now, during this trip back home, he reconnected with a few old friends and even met a few new ones, like the author Rudyard Kipling, who wrote The Jungle Book, and one of the richest men alive, Andrew Carnegie. Sometimes people say Carnegie. I don't know.
I feel like it's Carnegie. I feel like you're right.
Well, it's Carnegie Hall, but people have said his name was actually pronounced Carnegie, but I don't care. I say Carnegie.
No,
but
he's a
whatever.
billionaire. We don't care.
But soon, he zipped off to Chicago to check in on the new machines, but caught a cold along the way, causing him to miss the World's Fair that was happening in Chicago that year. And at that point, it was actually named, that one specific one was the World's Columbian Exhibition, as it was named after the anniversary of Christopher Columbus landing in America. Now, because of a cold, he missed the debuts of the Ferris wheel, the moving sidewalk, the Baha'i Faith, the Pledge of Allegiance, Juicy Fruit Gum, Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, Quaker Oats, Dvorak's New World Symphony, the Fluorescent Lamp, Ragtime Music, and the Souvenir Squashed Penny. There was even this crazy inventor there demonstrating induction motors, generators, and rotating magnetic fields, wowing the audiences with something called the Egg of Columbus, named after that year's World Exhibition. Some of you might know this crazy inventor. Akiva, who was it?
Nikola Tesla.
He was there.
Also, interesting enough, the Columbian Exhibition was a giant waterfront in which, just by stepping on one of the boats to visit one of the exhibitions, Twain would have been interacting with one of Tesla's designs, which is the induction motor. I have a little patent drawing of it right here in my
very
office.
Cool. But yes, he didn't get to go. He got a cold, so he missed the entire thing, which is very funny.
Yeah. And Tesla had some crazy stuff there, too. I'm pretty sure he had like a Tesla coil that was like 12 feet tall that he was running current through himself with.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I saw some pictures of it, and even from your series too. But I just had to include that because I was like, oh man, what a crazy coincidence!
So funny.
And if he had not caught a cold, he would have gotten to go and see Tesla demonstrate all this stuff.
We've said this a couple times in other episodes, but man, I would love to have gone to a World's Fair back then. I went to a World's Fair when I was in Osaka, and it's
not the same.
It was just basically just like countries posturing about how great they are, but there was no like Nikola Tesla hanging out showing everybody how he's gonna completely re-engineer society as a whole. Yeah. So cool. Poor Sam.
It was so cool I couldn't not include it.
That's so cool. Also, Juicy Fruit Gum. Didn't know it was that old.
Juicy Fruit Gum, yeah. And I was also like, oh, the Pledge of Allegiance. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Have you ever heard the very first Pledge of Allegiance?
I think so. It is different.
Very different from now. It did not say under God. It did not say to the United States of America. It just said to my country.
Oh, there you go.
It was a very different meaning and a very different story back then. Something interesting for any of the listeners to just sort of research.
Very cool. I'll have to check it out. Now, Sam did eventually meet with the page typesetter's inventor, but things were not going well. The country was currently in the middle of a financial panic, so the machines were not going to be manufactured after all. So the trip was kind of a waste. Sam was losing faith and tried to offload some of his stocks, but there were no takers. He headed back to Europe, bound to the page typesetting machine like a ball and chain. By September of 1893, Sam finally came to terms with the fact that he was a truly lousy businessman. By this point, he was just 2 months shy of turning 58 and had racked up debts totaling $175,000. That is about $6.3 million in today's currency. And he was desperately looking for a way out. So on a trip back to the U.S., Sam took Clara along with him, who is now 19. Once they arrived in New York, Clara headed to Elmira, which is where all of the Langdons were from and everything like that. And Sam went to Hartford to try and find someone whose charity was bountiful enough to throw him a life preserver. And he even noted at the time, quote, "The boat is sinking." Things were not looking good. No one, however, was willing to help. He went back to New York, practically begging any bank or investor he could think of, but still nothing. He wrote to Livy at the time saying, quote, "When I fell on the bed at 8 that evening, ruin seemed inevitable. But I was physically so exhausted that mental misery had no chance, and I was asleep in a moment." Just like, that's how hard he was trying to find people to help, basically, and invest.
Yeah, man.
But then, a few days later, a small miracle happened. Sam was waiting in the lobby of his hotel when in walked a fella by the name of Henry Huddleston Rogers. Now, for those not familiar, which I assume is most of you, Henry Huddleston Rogers was a titan of the Gilded Age and was involved in the oil, gas, railroads, insurance, and copper industries. He invented a new process of refining oil. He was a president of Standard Oil, and before he came along, oil was transported by train car. He literally invented the concept of oil pipelines. This guy.
Interesting.
Now, when he and Sam met, Henry Rogers was already worth hundreds of millions of dollars in that day's currency. Before he knew it, I know, right? Before he knew it, Sam and Henry were sitting down for drinks and talking like they'd been friends for years. Sam was amazed to discover that Henry's wit was damn near equal to his own, and that Henry had been a big fan ever since he caught one of Mark Twain's Sandwich Island lectures nearly 20 years prior.
Wow.
That's how long they had been, like, he had been a fan of Mark Twain, this guy. After learning of Sam's financial woes, Henry decided to buy the rights to a book that Sam's publishing company had been working on for $50,000. Of course, Henry didn't really want the rights. He just wanted to help Sam out without making him feel like a beggar. From that point on, the two men were essentially besties and hung out constantly. Henry even got involved with the ever-doomed Page typesetting machine, facilitated a soup-to-nuts renegotiation of the entire company, and organized a new stock structure that was more favorable and lucrative for Sam. Together, they painted New York red, eating at Delmonico's regularly, and Henry would introduce Sam to big names like Helen Keller, Sir Henry Irving, the boxer gentleman Jim Corbett, and the architect Stanford White, who designed the Washington Square Arch in New York, the Boston Public Library, and Wardenclyffe Tower, Nikola Tesla's wireless transmission station in Long Island.
Wow.
Cool little tie-in, right?
That is so cool. I love talking about this time in history because the circles are so tight. Yeah. Everybody knows everybody. It's fantastic.
It's so cool, dude. And
of course, that's so interesting. Also, $50,000 will make me best friends with anybody. Listeners, if you need a new friend, feel free to email the Biographers Podcast. I am more than happy to for measly $1,000.
We'll send you his Venmo.
Yes.
Drop that over anytime. And Sam, again, he was just having a really good time with this guy. He finally felt like his head was above water, and he was so excited. He even started working on a new Tom Sawyer book, which would eventually be titled Tom Sawyer Detective. He was becoming more and more interested in things like detectives and like courtroom dramas, which was a huge part of Pudd'nhead Wilson, by the way. It was like half the book, at least, is just this courtroom thing of them going through all the court proceedings. So,
yeah.
Now, in January of 1894, the new terms of business for the Page typesetting machine were accepted by the inventor, and Sam would write to Livy saying, quote, "I came up to my room and began to undress, and then suddenly and without warning, a realization burst upon me and overwhelmed me. I and mine, who were paupers an hour ago, are rich now, and our troubles are over. I walked the floor for half an hour in a storm of excitement. Once or twice, I wanted to sit down and cry."
That's awesome.
Makes me happy.
Yeah, that's good. It's also interesting, too, because we were still at a time where, like, I feel like rich people still wanted to have fun with their money a little bit. You know, obviously there was the General Electric and the Westinghouse guys who were complete assholes. And they were terrible people. Yeah. But they did, like, know how to, like, spend it. And just, like, him being like, oh, yeah, you're a great hang. Here, let me fix this for you. Like, that must have been insane for Mark Twain, who just didn't really have much business acumen. It was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I got myself out of the situation just by being friendly with this guy.
Totally. It's actually reminds me, I can't remember which one of the actresses, there was an actress from that Gilded Age show. And in an interview, somebody was talking about, whatever, the Gilded Age and all the stuff that was being built. And the comment the actress made was, well, yeah, in this period of American history, the ultra wealthy almost always, to some degree, reinvested in society. Whether it was, I'm going to build a new opera house, I am going to help make Central Park, I am going to, the list goes on. And in this guy's case, Henry Huddleston Rogers, he was like, I'm going to help the godfather of American comedy not live like he's about to go bankrupt. Like, that just seems like the right thing that I'm going to do. Like, I think society benefits from having Mark Twain around and able to continue life.
Yeah, and even with like Tesla, after Westinghouse was out of the picture, the people who took over Westinghouse did the same thing.
Yeah.
They were like, man, I cannot believe that George Westinghouse did this to Tesla. He's literally hopping from hotel to hotel. He's only got maybe 10 more years to live. Let's just pay off his expenses until then.
Right.
For the benefit of society, maybe not necessarily of their workers, but society at large, you'd have your Carnegie Halls and your, your whatever, skip.
Well, no, you're on the totally right track, too, because obviously there's a lot to say about the billionaires of the time, both good and bad. But as a good example, Andrew Carnegie, by the end of his life, he was trying to give away the vast majority of his fortune to charities and for conservation work and to buying up pieces of land that would go towards national parks, protected areas. Mm-hmm. Like, there were articles being written that were like, he is trying to offload all of his, like, he doesn't want it anymore. He's trying to do good things with it, versus fucking Jeff Bezos being like, I'm going to shut down Venice so that I can have my honeymoon here or whatever. Like, go away,
And there is that, like, the charity thing, and not to like damper the mood, but I would say I have a slightly skeptical eye with this, because a lot of the times those charities are still within the interests of the people who are donating. Like, for instance, the Patagonia billionaire, right? Everybody knows him as the poor billionaire. But most of the charities that he donates to are, run by or in the interests of him and his family. Whereas there are actual physical monuments to suggest that folks like Carnegie and Westinghouse did, in their own slightly messed up ways, contribute to society as a whole.
Totally. Yeah, totally agree. And again, this is not for us to be like, boy, they don't make billionaires like they used to.
It's like, I wish they didn't make them at all, actually. But these ones at least made a cool skyscraper, so I can appreciate that.
They did something that we can now look back at and be like, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyhow, in April, Henry Rogers would even act as Sam's book agent and somehow manage to land a dual publisher book deal for Pudd'nhead Wilson. So 2 different publishers were going to publish it. Sam would write to Livy soon after saying, quote, "Farewell, a long farewell to business. I will never touch it again. I would live in literature. I will wallow in it, revel in it. I will swim in ink." About goddamn time, dude.
Yeah, man. Let it go. Let it go.
Then, Henry Rogers performed his greatest miracle. Sam's publishing company was in massive debt to their bank. So the bank tried to seize Sam's house in Hartford along with his entire catalog of written work.
Wow.
Henry Rogers swooped in and told the bank that actually Livy Clemens, his wife, was owed $60,000 and had first claim on Sam's copyright material. And that actually the house was under Livy's name, so they had no right to seize that either.
Nice.
Further, he negotiated that Sam would only have to repay 50 cents on the dollar of the debt that he owed. Without Henry Rogers, Mark Twain would have lost the rights to everything he'd ever written.
Get you a friend like Henry Rogers.
Bro.
This is first on my to-do list. Allow me to take care of this for you.
Right. Now, Livy wasn't quite as thrilled with all of this as Sam was, as she felt that their debt was justified and that 100% of it ought to be paid back. She would say to Sam at the time, quote, "Oh, my darling, we want those debts paid, and we want to treat them all not only honestly, but we want to help them in every possible way. You say Mr. Rogers has said some caustic and telling things to the creditors. I should think it was the creditors' place to say caustic things to us." So she's basically like, yeah, they're being mean, and we fucking deserve it because we got ourselves into huge amounts of debt, and it's not really fair to then say we won't pay it off 100% because we did this to ourselves knowing what we were doing.
Well, good for her for having a good, like, moral compass. I'm sure Sam was like, we're out of it! And she's like, dude, come on.
A little bit, right? But if we've learned anything about their relationship, Sam and Livy's, is that Sam actually, one of the reasons he married her is that he's like, you're really, really smart, and I'm really reactionary. You know what I mean? Like, she thinks he dreams, you know?
Yes.
And
she acts a bit like a moral compass as well.
100%. So to this, Sam actually agreed and decided he would try to repay his entire debt in full. No discount. Wow. But he was now 58. His right arm, with which he wrote, was riddled with arthritis, and he just didn't seem to possess the depth for storytelling that he used to. To add to this, his wife was still sick, his oldest daughter was depressed, and his youngest daughter was epileptic. Repaying his debts in full was going to be a tall order. Finally, in May of 1894, Sam headed back to Europe. Things on the home front weren't exactly great. Livy was still sick, and Susie was growing more depressed and feeling generally feverish. This was only made worse after Susie visited her love, Louise Brownell, in England, who was studying at Oxford, only to discover that Louise wasn't really feeling the same way about her anymore.
Oh.
Susie was heartbroken. She would write to Louise after her visit saying, quote, "I could not dream this would happen, and that I should lose you now at the moment of having you again, after all these years of waiting. It is impossible. I cannot believe it. It cannot be true. Oh no, dear, dear Louise, my darling, it is too dreadful. Please come in to me and let me lie down in your arms and forget everything but the joy of being near you. Write me that you will let me see you once, one little once before you go. Forgive whatever there is wrong in this letter. It's my love that's so violent and demanding, my poor, terrified love that cannot give you up."
Ooh, young love, and to feel its keen sting.
I know. But it's still sad that it's like...
That is.
Susie like got kind of ripped away from all that she knew in America, ripped away from the woman she loved, and then when she finally is like, oh my gosh, I finally get to see you again, discovers, not feeling it anymore.
Yeah.
That's
I
sad.
wonder if it was social convention or perhaps another woman that kind of pushed her paramour away, but
yeah, I don't know.
That's unfortunate.
It is. Now, Sam, of course, had no idea what was really going on in Susie's heart and mind.
Yeah.
But he couldn't help but see something in Susie that reminded him of Joan of Arc. Now, I mentioned earlier that he had become obsessed with the story of Joan of Arc, and over the past year or so, he had written bits and pieces of a possible book about her, but now, largely inspired by his daughter Susie, he would write more. And eventually, it would become a full book called Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc. And then the hammer fell. The page typesetting machine had gone to the Chicago Herald newspaper for testing, but somewhere in its 18,000 moving parts, the machine jammed. It just didn't work.
Oh.
In December of 1894, Henry Rogers, whom Sam had given power of attorney, dissolved the company entirely. It was over. Sam would get no money for his stocks and no monetary return after nearly 15 years of investment.
Oh my God.
He would later say, quote, "There is a God for the rich man, but none for the poor." Whew.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was devastated, but he held no ill feelings towards Henry Rogers and would say of him, quote, He is not only the best friend I have ever had, but is the best man I have ever known. Henry Rogers, as a historical figure, is morally debatable, as he was known as an utterly ruthless businessman, but also, like we're kind of talking about earlier, charitable and socially prolific. Everybody knew him, and like generally they really liked him.
Yeah. There's a difference between being a good person and being in a horrific line of business.
Kinda, yeah. Now, he and Sam would remain friends for the rest of their lives, and from their friendship, Mark Twain would say one of his most famous lines ever. At a dinner party, a guest would pull Sam aside and say, quote, "Your friend Rogers is a good fellow. It's a pity his money is tainted." To which Mark Twain replied, quote, "It's twice tainted. Taint yours and taint mine." It's a good one, dude.
Stupid.
But so good. Now, in March of 1895, Sam stopped by the old family home in Hartford to, more or less, say goodbye. He would write to Livy saying, quote, "As soon as I entered this front door, I was seized with a furious desire to have us all in this house again and ride away and never go outside the grounds any more forever. This place is bewitchingly bright and splendid and homelike and natural, and it seemed as if I had burst awake out of a hellish dream and had never been away, and that you would come drifting down out of those dainty upper regions with the little children tagging after you. It is the loveliest home that ever was." But the family would never be together in the Hartford house again.
It's unfortunate.
Now, because of his investments and them all running dry, he was still in massive debt. So Sam began hatching a new plan to make some income. A year-long lecture tour around the world. He had finished writing Tom Sawyer Detective a few months earlier and was in the process of finishing Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc, but he knew he could no longer count on book sales to keep him afloat. So a massive lecture tour seemed like the ticket. The tour would quite literally span the planet, making stops in Australia, Tasmania, India, Ceylon, South Africa, and the British Isles, along with many stops in the US.
Wow. When you say world tour, typically at this time, what they mean is America and Europe?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. He went all over. Now, Clara would be the only Clemens offspring to join her parents on the trip. Susie and Jean decided to head back to Elmira in New York. Susie wanted to continue pursuing singing in the States, and Jean was planning on enrolling at the Elmira Ladies Seminary, funny enough. Before their planned departure time of mid-July, the whole Clemens crew gathered at Quarry Farm, which gave Sam time to work on the actual lecture in between the constant hounding of creditors. So he had figured out, I'm going to go on this tour, but he hadn't written what he was going to do. Sam, Livy, and Clara left on their year-long journey on July 14th, 1895, and by its end, they would travel over 53,000 miles.
Wow.
I know. The first stop was in Cleveland, then across the Great Lakes through Minneapolis. His first lecture or two were a little bit shaky, but by the third or fourth performance, the cobwebs had been dusted off, and he was back in form. Clara would write about her father's stage presence, saying, quote, "Father knew the full value of a pause, and had the courage to make a long one when required for a big effect. And his inimitable drawling speech, which he often lost in private life, greatly increased the humorous effect on the stage. People in the house, including men, got hysterical. Cries that resembled the cries of pain could often be heard. It always seemed to me the greatest possible achievement to make a house rock with mirth, and I believe that Mark Twain was often elevated by it himself. His cheeks and eyes glowed with color that resembled tinted sparks." She's got a gift for writing, too, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Now, as the tour was kicking off, word had begun to circulate that Mark Twain's entire lecture tour was to square off his debts. And incredibly, this actually drew more people to his shows. They almost felt like they owed him as much for giving them all so much joy throughout the years. Random people would even come up to him on the streets and try to give him extra money, but he politely refused.
That's sweet.
More good news still. His Joan of Arc book had begun a serial publication in Harper's Magazine, and it was actually a hit. Even better still, Sam had been publishing it under the pen name of Sieur Louis de Conte, so many people didn't actually know it was him, but those with a keen eye did.
Also, Louis de Conte, I'm not sure if you know who that is.
Nope.
Conte was one of Napoleon's. Do you remember the geniuses that got thrown into Egypt when they did their campaign of Egypt with General Alexander Dumas? They were called the Savants.
Okay.
Right? One of them got chased down by a dog.
Okay,
they had no supplies. They were left to their own. One of them was a gentleman with an eye patch who tried to make that hot air balloon that set on fire, and all the Egyptian people were like, well, these guys are idiots. They're clearly making, festival goodies.
Yeah.
That was Conte.
Oh, okay.
And he's also the highly debated inventor of the pencil.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of cool. French dude, had an eye patch. Weird history. Was abandoned in Egypt by Napoleon.
Okay. Pretty interesting. Very
if I
cool.
am not incorrect.
I wonder if he's actually like making fun of the same person and saying that he's actually wrote this thing of Joan of Arc, but I don't know. Office hours.
He was a
question.
historian. That was his primary function. So.
Then that's almost I'll confirm that, and we'll
yes,
talk about
I
it
will
in
have to
office
double
hours.
check that on the biographers on the office hours, because that could 100% just be an Akiva fact and not an actual real thing. But I'm pretty sure the last name was Conte, and I want to say his first name was Louis.
Cool. Yeah, we'll check it out. Now, once the tour in America was done, they headed for Australia. Here, he and the family were treated like royalty, with everyone fawning over all of them. Clara even wrote that they received so many flowers at their hotel that it was almost like they were all in mourning. it's like a funeral. There's so many flowers. And this might sound strange, but Sam was only just starting to realize that he wasn't just Mark Twain. He was Mark Twain, if you hear the difference.
Yeah.
But from Australia, they went to Tasmania, then to New Zealand, and they were treated pretty much the same everywhere they went. It was in New Zealand that he turned 60 years old. But through his time in Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand, he was becoming punishingly aware of the effects of British colonialism, which had reduced the native populations of all three nations by 80% in the first 20 years alone.
Wow, interesting. I'm also surprised that was something that was within his radar, because he wasn't necessarily super pro-native here in the States.
He was, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, and I would say it's very specifically American Indian. He was no reservations or excuses. He was racist against Native Americans in the States.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is an interesting point.
I wonder if that perspective ever transferred as he got older, and he maybe no. He was just like he's like, oh, these poor New Zealanders, damn Americans. Yeah.
I mean, a little bit. There was even a point where I want to say it's not long after this. He's like giving a speech, might have been slightly before, and he says something to the effect of like, I hold no reservations against any man of any color save one. He literally said that and was referring to Native Americans. So like he didn't even hide behind it.
Austin Powers is like, there's only two things I hate in the world: people who are discriminating other people based off of their race, and the Dutch.
I mean, that's very accurate.
Yeah.
But anyways, of this whole thing, he was kind of discovering that America was not so unique in their kind of treatment of Native peoples, which again is ironic now that you bring that up. I didn't even make that connection. But of British colonialism, Sam would write, quote, "It's robbery, humiliation, and slow, slow murder through poverty and the white man's whiskey. He has been picking out the best of the land and the best of the people and the best of the opportunities, and when he has stolen all he could, he has left the rest to starve and die, and then he has wondered at the savagery of the people. There are many humorous things in the world, among them the white man's notion that he is less savage than the other savages." So it was around this time that he wrote that.
And also hilariously ironic, considering what we talked about with Jack Daniel and the firewater situation.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is very, very true. Now, the tour would continue on into 1896, and the Clemens crew would make stops in Ceylon and then India, where they remained for 2 months before heading to South Africa. Back home, Susie Clemens was actually happier than she had been in years, and her haze of depression was lifted as she entrenched herself ever deeper into her social life while continuing to pursue singing. She had relocated to Hartford, believe it or not, and even got to spend time in her childhood home as a boarder. It was currently being leased to another company, or probably another couple, not company, and she was allowed to stay on there as a boarder. In her old childhood home, she got to play piano and sing at the top of her lungs, and groups of passersby were known to stop and listen. Like, she was that good. They'd be like, "Oh, Susie's playing," and they would like sit outside on the streets and like listen to her singing and playing piano. It's pretty cool. In mid-June, Sam, Livy, and Clara left South Africa and were headed for England. It had been a full year since they'd left the States. Sam planned to do some lectures around London, then spend 6 months after writing a book about the past year's travels, which would eventually be titled Following the Equator. His Joan of Arc book was now being published as a novel, and Harper's was planning on serializing Tom Sawyer Detective in August. So the writing was still happening. Things were going well, and they were making arrangements to have Susie and Jean join them in England. The two girls were set to leave on August 4th. But on August 3rd, the night before she was supposed to leave, Susie came down with a fever. The departure date was now delayed to August 12th. A few days later, they received another telegram saying that Susie was still ill and that her recovery would be long, but certain. Livy, however, was starting to freak out a little bit, so she booked a last-minute passage home with Clara. But Sam figured that since Susie wasn't in any real danger, he would stay behind. They waved goodbye to Sam on August 15th, and after they left, that very same day, Sam received another telegram. Susie's doctor had changed his diagnosis. She had meningitis.
Oh, no.
The lining of her brain and her spinal column were swelling. There was nothing the doctor could do, and it was fatal.
Oh, my God.
Sam was understandably beside himself for not going home with his wife and daughter as well. He wrote Livy pretty much in vain, saying, quote, "My heart was wrung yesterday. I could not tell you how deeply I loved you, nor how I pitied you in this awful trouble that my mistakes have brought upon you. I shall never forgive myself while the life is in me. If you find our poor little Susie in the state I seem to foresee, your dear head will be grayer when I see it next. Be good and get well, Susie dear. Don't break your mother's heart." The days leading up to her death were cruel, with Susie suffering from hallucinations caused by the swelling in her brain. She paced around the room, ranting and raving incoherently, scribbling nonsense on random pieces of paper. She now believed she was a mezzo-soprano singer from Paris named La Malembran, and would write some 47 pages in her confusion, saying things like, quote, "Say I will try not to doubt, and I will obey my benefactress, Madame Malibran. Now go and hold this song, nothing but indecision. Go on, go on. Yes, does she bow her head too, Whitehead? She must, she must, she must. Yes, my black princess. Tell her to say, God bless the shadows as I bless the light. In me darkness must remain from everlasting to everlasting forever. Sometimes less painful darkness, but darkness in the complement of light. Yes, tell her to say she trusts you, child of great darkness, and light to me, who can keep the darkness universal and free from sensual taint. The universe is united. You may not dissever greatness of the earth."
Oh, my God.
Just nothing.
Complete nothing. That's...
Before it was over, Susie would even lose her sight entirely. On August 16th, she fumbled blindly towards her caretaker, felt her face, shouted, "Mama," then collapsed into a coma. 2 days later, on August 18th, Olivia Susan Clemens would pass away at the age of 24. Sam's pride and joy was gone. Livy, who was currently on a steamship in the middle of the Atlantic, would not learn of her daughter's death for another 2 days. Sam Clemens would never fully recover. And that is where we'll pick back up for part 10.
You bastard.
The conclusion of Mark Twain.
You bastard. I knew you were going to do it.
It's
poor Susie.
awful.
Susie's life, is one that I can sentimentalize, but is also one mainly of tragedy in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she's kind of watching her father's decline for most of her life. She ends up leaving school. She falls in love with a person that she just, almost by the laws of nature, cannot be with at the time that she is alive.
Yep.
Never really gets to quite make it as an actress, never really quite gets to make it as a singer, and then is betrayed by her own mind. That is catastrophic.
Yeah. And so young. 24, man. I mean,
24.
Didn't you just turn 25 or 26?
I'm 26 now. That would have been 2 years earlier than me now.
Yeah. Which is unbelievable to think about. And
Yeah.
especially when it's like, oh, this budding artist who could sing and stage act and play piano. And I didn't include it, but there are also these stories of those past few days that she was, her brain was swelling and she was having these hallucinations and whatnot. She would hear like a trolley car go down the road, and she would like yell out the window, like they're sending up the trolley car for Mark Twain's daughter, stuff like that. Yeah. So, not that it matters a whole lot, but it was also not necessarily public, but it was, people knew, right, around the area. They were like, uh-oh, something's happening with Susie Clemens right now.
Yeah, like to some extent, she's not even able to die with dignity.
Right. Yeah, really, really, really sad situation. And yeah, so, and if we're counting, by the way, that is now 2 of Mark Twain's children who have died.
Yeah. Yeah, if you ever thought that you would have been better off in the 1800s as a parent, you're dead wrong.
Yeah, just as a human. The amount of things they could not treat back then at all were staggering, right? So, very, very sad situation. And like I said, that's why I was like, oh, we're getting into the sad bits. And you kind of saw throughout this entire thing, even when things were like looking a bit better, it was like, oh, he's broke. But then somebody comes and helps him out. It's like, then his main investment dies after 15 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's rough times for Mark Twain,
Yeah, absolutely brutal. And I'm sure having to grieve the apple of his eye, exactly like you said, alone as well, was another brutality and another scenario where Mark Twain, I am certain, did not take it well, knowing how he reacted with the death of his brother and the death of so many other people in his life.
Yep.
And then to be in a foreign, I couldn't even comprehend it. I couldn't imagine myself being in a foreign country, and I don't have kids, but imagining one of my little brothers dies, and I could have seen him, chas v'shalom, God forbid. That's no parent ever wants to see that.
And we'll talk about it in the next episode, but if anybody is kind of curious too, another horribly tragic thing was that obviously at this point in history, embalming was not what it was, refrigeration was not what it was, so he couldn't even make it home for her funeral because it just wouldn't have.
She wouldn't have kept.
She wouldn't have, as sort of strange that is to say. So, he had to even miss his own daughter's funeral, which means Livy had to do it alone, more or less, which is also heartbreaking. Brutal. So, very awful. There's no other word for it. And it's funny, too, because it was... I'm basically done with the next episode. I'm polishing it up right now and adding some stuff here and there and whatnot. But I was telling Kat about it the other day because I was working all day on Saturday doing this. And I was like, I think more so than ever in any series that I've ever done, I'm really upset that Mark Twain is going to die. Yeah. And I know that's weird to say, but like, that is how I feel, where I'm like, I know it's going to come and it's just going to make me sadder than ever. Cause I feel like it's the only comparison I could think of is, maybe you haven't, but you should, it's so good. Have you ever seen a movie called The Hunt for the Wilder People?
No.
It was one of Taika Waititi's movies. Mm-hmm. It takes place in New Zealand. It's also got Sam Neill, the main guy from Jurassic Park, the Dr. Grant, and it's all about him and his wife taking in this little kid who's like 13 years old or something like that as a foster situation. And there's a point where the little kid is talking to Sam Neill, and he says something like, he's talking about Tupac and how Tupac is his favorite. And he loves Tupac.
Yeah.
And Sam Neill goes, Tupac? But who's Tupac? And the kid goes, he's like my best friend. And that's sort of the feeling that I get with Mark Twain. It's like it's at this point where it's like I know he's going to die, and I'm like, I feel like it's one of my best friends.
It's almost like a parasocial relationship.
Yeah. And I know that sounds silly, but I don't know. I've spent so much time learning about this guy and his life. And, though imperfect in many ways, so much of him I love.
He's a man after your own heart, I think, in a lot of ways.
100%, you know.
Ugh.
So.
Yeah, well, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yay!
Daniel ruined it for you. I hope you're happy.
I didn't even think about that.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Tiny
Christmas
Tim
indeed.
dies in the end. Are you happy now?
Oh, man. I honestly didn't even think about that. But yeah, that's probably a good way to start to wrap it up, though. I do hope everybody has at least been enjoying, and hopefully you can see why, too. If I had, like, all of what we just covered, right?
Oh, God. No,
if this
it would
had
have
been
been
yada
a travesty to.
Right? It's just there's
skip this.
so much information of, like, the ups and the downs and his own personal thoughts about how his life was going and everything. It's just, there's a lot there. So I really did not want to skip it over and be like, I was trying to get it into 9 parts and whatever, because it's like, there's so much there. And I honestly, one of the biggest purposes, too, is to be like, I need to give Susie enough of a life to where when she dies, you go like, dude. Because even in, and I've made this comparison many times, but even in the Ken Burns documentary series about Mark Twain, it's like, and then Susie died of meningitis, and that's about all we know. Like, no other context is given. We don't know anything about her. And this was one of those that I was like, no, I kind of want to give this opportunity to be like, Mark Twain existed outside of himself. There were people in his life and in his immediate sphere and his children and everything that were also living, breathing human beings with their own thoughts and feelings and struggles and all that kind of stuff. And so it's, to me, it's a lot more impactful to be like, this is who she was, and then this is what became of her, and that's way more heartbreaking to me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I gave that kind of time there. So anyhow.
Absolutely.
Sorry to end it on such a bummer. I know it's a bummer.
Merry Christmas!
Yay! But we can wrap it up here, everybody. But again, we are going to be off for an additional week. So I want to say
just sit and think about the last part of this episode for that time. You'll be fine. We're going to be okay.
Let me see. I'm going to look at the calendar. I just want to make sure that I have my timeline correct. So yes, it will be on January 16th, not the 6th. That is going to be part 10 of Mark Twain. And then again, we'll kind of leave a couple of other things there.
Yep.
That are going to be happening.
That things that are brewing that are going to be really cool.
Yeah, we're pretty darn excited.
Maybe some first times for the Biographers podcast.
Yeah, it'll be great. So stay tuned for that. But again, hopefully y'all have been enjoying the series so far as much as I have, and it sounds like Akiva, you have as well. It's just been a awesome, wild ride, and to learn about this hugely important character of American history and really world history, if you kind of think about it too. So we'll leave it there. But yeah, hopefully everybody y'all had a good little holiday season, whatever you celebrate. If it's Hanukkah, which started on today's record, well, technically yesterday night at sundown. Mm-hmm. But today is the first official full day, I guess you could say, of Hanukkah. Yeah. So happy Hanukkah. And I think Hanukkah's over by the time this will be released. So hope you had a good one. But same thing with Christmas and obviously Kwanzaa, which I've been learning more and more about. And it's I've been not necessarily surprised, but interested to learn that a lot more people celebrate Kwanzaa than I give credit for, I think. So anybody out there that celebrates whatever you celebrate, hope you had a good one. And hopefully this episode did not bring you down in any way, too much anyways. But c'est la vie, such is life, you know? Mm-hmm. But from there, again, we'll stop here. Again, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to support the show, you can do so by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. Any questions, comments, corrections, or just to say hello, you can shoot us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to give us a nice, kind review somewhere, we'd appreciate that as well. You can do so on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And always give a word for you, Akiva, when it comes to all things metal. What's going on?
Yeah, so At the time of this recording, you'll have about 4 days to participate in the shop cleaning sale that I'm doing. Basically, for those of you who don't know, I recently moved to a new place, and I've been very slowly building up the equipment to get this shop fully operational, and I just want to clear out all of my inventory by the end of the year, so I'm doing 30% off everything on the website. I haven't done a sale that big since my wedding, and honestly it might have been a little bit too big because I think we talked about this in the last episode. Almost everything sold out, so there's a chance that there's nothing on the website when you check it out. But if there is, go to metalworkbymiola.com. If you're listening after that date, 10% off for anybody who enters in the code biographers at checkout. As far as classes go, this year is booked, but next year is open. So if you want to learn from me in person and you're in Colorado, check out Hardy and Fuller here in Denver. We teach classes from total beginner classes all the way up to some intermediate, so you can start working on your knives on your own time, and you have the basics to understand bladesmithing as a whole. Nice. So Metalwork by Miola, Hardy and Fuller.
Check it out, everybody. That's how Akiva and I became friends, as I started doing some forging, and you can be our friend, too, if you want.
Yeah. And if you have $50,000, there's a guarantee that you'll be my friend. Like I said before.
You can be our Henry Rogers.
You can be our Henry Rogers.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. We will see you officially this time in the new year. Hope you have fun. Be safe out there. And do remember, like always, ignorance is not stupidity. It is the absence of knowledge, and I do hope you all learned something today.
Happy holidays.
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.